thank you for agreeing to mentor one of our teacher candidates here at Fitchburg State University. With this video, we are looking to give you some guidance on how to use the Gateway 2 Assessment Observation Rubric. Here you will find a copy of the Gateway 2 Assessment Observation Rubric. Yes, it's very small, but we promise we will go through each one of the criteria so that you know exactly what you need to do as an observer in order to rate the teacher candidate's lesson performance, making sure that student learning and student growth are at the first and foremost of all lessons. Observers will rate the performance of teacher candidates using 8 criteria: well-structured lessons that actively engage students in the learning, creating a safe environment, reinforcing high standards, adjusting to practice, using assessments to measure growth of student learning, meeting the diverse needs of students, and knowing an accuracy and depth of knowledge in the subject matter that they are teaching, and having fluency in that subject matter, both vertically and a vertical progression of that learning. You will be looking at ratings such as not meeting the criteria, approaching the criteria, meeting the criteria, and not observed. It is perfectly okay for a student teacher to be approaching that criteria and not yet meeting it. We would expect this at this point of their teaching career. The first criteria we're going to look at is well-structured lessons that actively engage students in learning. So the students will be actively engaged in the activity whether they are in small groups or individually. They will be showing an interest in the lesson, and they will not just be listening, but they will be actively participating. This will require the teacher candidate to use a variety of resources, which may include small groups, manipulatives, materials, use of technology, and really just good planning and good well-structured lessons with measurable goals. This will also mean that the teacher candidate will need to pace their lessons in order to have optimum student growth and learning. Please review the following video about well-structured lessons that actively engage students in learning. All you need to do is click the image for an example of a well-structured lesson. The next criteria that we'll look at is creating a safe environment. The teacher candidate in this case will be using a variety of management strategies that ensure that learning is not interrupted. Not only are they keeping all students safe and they're managing student behavior, but they're making sure that rules are established and routines are established and students are able to take adequate academic risks in order for the best learning to occur. We also expect that student teachers, our teacher candidates, are reinforcing high expectations. They are modeling instruction so that all students can achieve at high levels, and they are also encouraging students to exert their best effort. And in this case, students are using strategies that are modeled by their teacher candidate and that result in growth of learning. They want to show their best effort, and that's all we can ask of every student. Teacher candidates also need to learn how to use assessment to inform their teaching and make changes both within the lesson and from day to day. They're going to need to learn how to identify ways to differentiate the content and the products and the processes in order to meet the needs of all students. This might also include implementing interventions for struggling students. This will give students an opportunity to use a variety of strategies and tools to help them through their productive struggles. We'll need to help teacher candidates use assessments in order to measure the growth of student learning. This will be a variety of assessments, both formative and summative, throughout the lesson and from day to day. This might include observations and checklists and notes. This will include students answering questions and teacher candidates monitoring those questions and answering them appropriately. And students will be learning both verbally and through writing and use of technology. Assessment can look a lot of different ways for different children, and it's going to be our responsibility to help teacher candidates learn the different ways that we can reach all students. We ask that teacher candidates learn how to adapt materials to meet the needs of students with varying learning styles, needs, interests, and levels of readiness. This might include differentiating instruction to meet the needs of students with disabilities or English language learners. It's about creating tiered assignments and scaffolds and providing materials that include people of all races and abilities. We want students to be able to work easily with classmates of different races and abilities, and we want them to know that they have various strategies and materials that they can use in order to meet their needs and in order to make sure they are learning to the best of their ability. Vocabulary is so important, and that's why we really look at accuracy and depth of knowledge in the subject matter for each teacher candidate. If the teacher candidate doesn't truly know the subject matter, it will be very difficult for he or she to explain that to our students at no matter what level they're at. So we want students to be able to ask questions and answer questions that show a depth of understanding, and we want that the teacher candidate know how to answer them. We need to make sure that the teacher candidate can explain why in the problem solving and not just how. We want them to be asking questions of their students that move student learning beyond the surface level vocabulary. We want them to answer questions with accuracy and precision in a way that advances student learning. Please click the image below to watch the video showing an example of accurate and depth of subject matter knowledge. Fluency in subject matter might be more difficult for student teachers, and our teacher candidates might not be fully aware of the curriculum across grade levels. So we need to make sure that the teacher candidate is asking questions that connect learning across subject areas, that they're making connections to previous lessons, and that they're showing students how new topics relate to those that students already know. We want the students to be making connections to previous learning, whether it be in a previous grade level or earlier in the school year. And we want them using new and previously learned content vocabulary in new lessons as well. One of the areas that we want to ensure that teacher candidates do throughout their career is to learn how to be reflective. Each day, a teacher needs to reflect on their practices. How can they grow? How can they help their students grow? And this might be difficult for young teacher candidates. So we ask that you use these insights and kind of talk them through how to reflect to improve their practice so that it enhances student learning. So please model reflective practices and provide written feedback that asks important questions about how the candidate's actions impacted student learning. While we're looking at student teachers and the teacher candidates' progress, we want to identify areas of reinforcement. So we'll observe the student teacher, the teacher candidate, and look for areas of strength. This should be a statement to encourage the candidate to continue these effective practices in the future. We will also look at areas of refinement. The observers will identify areas that are in need of improvement. This should be a statement that identifies needs, but also for suggestions on how to effectively improve this area to ensure student learning. Sometimes when we ask our teacher candidates questions, they don't always know the correct answer. Sometimes we need to guide them and give them more information and just tell them what is best, because sometimes they just don't know what they don't know, and that's okay. So in order to pass the Gateway assessment criteria, candidates must meet the standard in at least the following categories in order to pass student teaching. They need to have well-structured lessons that actively engage students in the learning. They need to use assessments that measure growth of student learning. There needs to be accuracy and depth of knowledge in the subject matter, and they have to have fluency in that subject matter, recalling information that was either learned in the past or across grade levels. Thank you so much for your participation in this training. As the Japanese proverb says, better than 1,000 days of diligent study is one day with a great teacher. We want the best teacher in every classroom across all of the United States and across Massachusetts. You have the ability to help our teacher candidates become the best they can be. Thank you for your participation.